أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم
ياسين والقرآن الحكيم إنك لمن المرسلين على صراط مستقيم تنزيل العزيز الرحيم لتنذر قوما ما أنذر آباؤهم فهم غافلون لقد حق القول على أكثرهم فهم لا يؤمنون إنا جعلنا في أعناقهم أغلالا فهي إلى الأذقان فهم مقمحون وجعلنا من بين أيديهم سدا ومن خلفهم سدا.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Firstly, brothers and sisters, thank you very much for joining us this afternoon, and thank you to the committee for arranging this session. It's a really important session, one that we all need to know something about at some stage in our lives, either as for family or for the wider community, inshallah. Assalamu alaikum, Imam. So we'll spend a little bit of time. I'll talk about a few different things and what you need to do. I'll run through all of the slides. Everything I say is on our website, so you don't need to make any notes. Everything's there, and I'll give you some snapshots as I go through of the different pages that we have on the website. So inshallah, you can refer to that whenever you need, if you need it. So firstly, we always talk about why we have an organization like Muslim Funeral Services, why we as a group do this, and that's because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, Kullu nafsin dha'iqatul maut. Every soul shall have a taste of death. So we know at some stage in our lives, we will experience, as I said, either family, friends, or community. And to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala we belong, and unto Him we shall return. So this is why we do it. And as an organization, we were formed some years ago to fulfill this role, to understand what we do in terms of funerals and stuff like that. So the main thing is that dealing with funerals, dealing with the death and the dying process is a fard-e kifaya. What it means is that it's an obligation on us as an entire community to make sure somebody does this. But if one person does it, then all of the responsibility from the rest of us is taken away and we absolved from that responsibility. But if nobody does it, then every one of us is accountable for what happens in terms of the death and dying and the burial process of somebody in our community. So we do it for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to fulfill this obligation on us. And as Muslims, we know that family and community get involved in this, so it's not something that we just outsource to somebody else and allow them to take care of this responsibility. Sorry, am I blocking your? I can stand on this side, that's okay. So we'll talk about a few things today. The first is just about MFS as an organization. It's important that you all understand who we are, where we come from, what we do, about Islamic funerals in general, what to do when death occurs, the funeral process, the ghusl procedure, a funeral savings plan, and as I said earlier, all this information is on our website. So about us as an organization, we were formed in 2010. It's an ASIC registered company. We're based at the Karabi Masjid, but we do not belong to the Masjid, and we're autonomous from Masjids in general. We provide a service to all over the Southeast Queensland Muslim community. We run as a not-for-profit entity, and we are a committee of volunteers. So this is a snapshot of our web page, the first page on it, so it's got all of that information there. As a committee, it's myself, Brother Yusuf who's here, Riaz who's here, and Hassan on the Gold Coast, Hassan Goss, and he manages the operations on the Gold Coast. That's us, just to show if we need any identifiers at a burial, we know who we are. We have also a team of volunteers. So Ziad is there, Farida, who's our admin's assistant lady, If there's a funeral, you may talk to her. Oftentimes, she's doing the booking of the graves and that sort of stuff. We have a group of male volunteers and female volunteers. As far as the services offered, we offer a full funeral director service. So everything that you will get with any Aussie funeral director, we will provide to you. We do all the transport arrangements, the grave bookings, all the pickup from the hospital, the mortuary, or nursing home, and to the nearest Husel facility, or our facility at Karabi. We liaise with the hospital, the police, the coroner's office, mortuary. We complete all the paperwork that needs to be done, and we register the death with the Department of Births, Deaths and Marriages. Other services is we do interstate and overseas transfers, both in and out of the country. We outsource embalming, and that's done at our facility if needed. And I'll talk a little bit about that in a few minutes. The next thing is that we do burials at Mount Gravatt, Hemmond, the Gold Coast, Coomera, and Beedley, and we now have Ipswich as well as a new cemetery there. Sorry, I think the battery might be dead, so I'm just gonna. No, I got a battery here. Just bear with me for a second. So our offices are based at the Karabi Masjid. We have a fully equipped Husel room there, the coal room, hearse facility, the storage facility at Karabi. And at Karabi, we manufacture all the boxes we use for the burial process. And we do our coffin packaging and cutting and packaging there. So the coffins, when they pack, they're ready into a pre-packed pack. That's exactly how we need it. And we'll show you when we do the workshop later, but it's all packed like this, and it's all in layers as we need it in terms of exactly how we unfold, and we use it like this here. So that we all do in-house ourselves. That's our hearses that we have. We've got 2 hearses on Brisbane and 1 on the Gold Coast. This is a Janaza Salah that we did last July, a year ago at Karabi Masjid. This was still brand new on that day. We had about 800-900 people attend that Janaza Salah. We as an organization do about 130 funerals per year. And over the last 15 years, we now have done over 1,100 funerals. About 20 to 25% of these are stillborn babies. So about Muslim funerals in general, we bury as soon as possible, usually within 24 hours. We require a cause of death certificate as soon as possible, and that's important. There are no cremations in Islam as a general rule, and there's no exceptions to that, but we've had the odd case where somebody in a mixed marriage has been unable to secure that, so that may have happened, but as a general rule, no, there's absolutely no cremations. There's no need for embalming, and the exceptions here are if we're sending a janaza overseas. Postmortems are discouraged unless absolutely needed for medical legal reasons. And there's no coffins, we bury on the ground, so burial takes place directly on the ground. This again is about the same information on our website there. So we talk about a few things, and when death is expected, what do we do? And I think that's important as a community, as a family. If we know somebody is unwell, they're terminally ill, they met an accident, and they're not expected to live for too long, then we say contact us and have that conversation, because we give you some guidelines as to what to do, how to deal with the police, how to deal with the hospital, all of that there. We then ask you to complete all the online forms and paperwork, and this can happen before somebody passes away, if they're expected to pass away. Death, at the best of times for all of us, is a very difficult thing. And at the time when somebody passes away, to then tell them to go and fill out a whole lot of paperwork becomes overwhelming. So we're actually saying, if you complete this beforehand, when the person passes away, then you're not overwhelmed and you don't have to do this today and today. But other than that, it has to be done usually before we actually do the burial, the bookings and stuff like that. We always say, advise the doctor, the hospital, the nursing home, that the patient is Muslim. And this is important because there are lots of reverts. There are people who become Muslim whose names may not sound Muslim. And we've had the hospital, when we asked for a cause of death, saying, oh, nobody knew the person was Muslim. And that's because they revert to Islam and their names may not be appearing as Muslim even to the staff. So if we let them know, they make arrangements to ensure that that cause of death is sorted out as soon as possible. There's the need for that death certificate as soon as possible. Without that, we cannot bury and we cannot do anything past that point. We ask you to complete all the necessary forms, and then whenever death occurs, to contact us. We just like to know, even if somebody passes away at 2 in the morning and you let us know or send us a message and get acknowledged, we may only pick up after Fajr, but at least we know we can get the team in motion to make things happen. All right, so we ask you to remain at the hospital till the arrangement for that cause of death certificate is made. This is important because if somebody passes away and you as the family are gone away, that process may get delayed. Now, if it's somebody passed away at 10 o'clock at night, that's okay because the doctor's only going to do it at 8 the next morning. It's okay to go home, but come back that next morning. So at least when you're in their face, they will encourage and make that cause of death be completed as soon as possible. This is just a snapshot of the website. Now, when somebody passes away, there's a few important things, and we can do a few things before they pass away. So removing false teeth, contact lenses, artificial limbs can be done before. After they pass away, any tubes can be removed. Any incisions plugged to prevent blood flow. We ask for close the eyes, close the mouth, and use a strip of bandage or cloth to do that. Put the arms on the side and bring the feet together, and usually tie the ankles or the toes together. Leave the body still fully clothed and wrapped in a sheet, and this is mainly in the hospital setup, but even at home, similar thing. So when that occurs, contact us. Contact the ambulance first. The ambulance then, if it's at home, the ambulance arrives at home, and what they do is called a life extinct form. It means this person has passed away. All right? Then, and let us know what to do at that point in time, because if there's any advice we need to give you, that's the time to do it. If something happens, this person's expected to die, they're under palliative care, but you get a rookie policeman that the ambulance calls them, he's new, he doesn't know what the process is. He says, oh, no, we don't have a cause of death now, so we're going to take this janazah to the mortuary. Whereas if we step in at that point and say, no, this person's expected to die, the palliative care team will do the cause of death in the morning, and we happy as a funeral director to take that responsibility, then that's okay. So that's fine. Contact the GP as soon as you can to do that cause of death certificate, or the palliative care doctor will do that. And then you arrange that cause of death certificate to be done. Without that, nothing can be done in terms of the burial of the deceased. This is just a flow chart. Again, because of the light in here, you may not see it too well, but it's on our website to tell you exactly what to do in terms of that process. With regards to the forms that we talk about, we always ask that forms be completed, be it way before or even when somebody passes away. And this is absolutely important and crucial. Oftentimes people ask us, why do we need all of this paperwork? What the first form is really an application and consent form to us to say you are applying to have this done and giving us permission to pick up the janazah. This for somebody in one big homogeneous community where we all come from a country where we all family and Muslims and have grown up and been Muslims is okay. But when we've got mixed marriages and there are parts of the family that may not be Muslim, then we need that consent, because it has happened to us where somebody who was from a previous marriage comes along and says, who gave you permission to bury my father or to do the funeral for my parent or a next of kin? So we need that as a consent form for us to go ahead and do that. The authority to release from the hospital needs this signed by the family to say that we've got permission to pick up the janazah from the hospital. The cemetery application form, each of the councils have got their own forms, and they need that form completed before they book the grave for the deceased. So it's important. And for somebody that's going through this process, they might look and say, I don't need time, I don't have time to do all of this paperwork, but we need it. Without this, the council doesn't want to book the grave. We don't have permission to do the funeral. The hospital doesn't have permission to give the body to us. So it's important that you do that. We have a next of kin form. This is in particular for those people where there might be a mixed marriage, where somebody may not understand the process, and we go through a checklist of 20, 30 different things, explaining this process to them. Now, in the case of a non-Muslim funeral, where we've got luxury of time, somebody passes away today, the funeral director will say, I will set up a meeting on Tuesday afternoon. You come in, you have a chat, and the burial is going to be the week after. So they've got that luxury of time. For us, we don't have that. We bury within 24 hours, and we've done it sometime within 5 and 6 hours even. So we don't have time to sit down and have that meeting necessarily. And we're happy to do it if we need to, but sometimes it's just not always possible. That next of kin form then explains to that family that, hey, we don't have a Cadillac hearse, we don't have a separate chapel at the mosque, we don't allocate pallbearers, we don't do this, because those are practices that non-Muslims expect. And when we have a non-practicing family, then they come along and they've said, oh, strange people have lifted my father's janazah, and stuff like that comes, and we've had that. So we have to deal with that, and that's why we've got that list that's there. Then we've got the births, deaths, and marriages registration form, and that's done by us, and it's an online form. This is a snapshot of our website. The first form there is the adult application and consent form. The second one is the child and stillborn application. The main difference between the two is in a child, there's no marriages that you need to worry about, no children, they have to complete that. So the form's a little bit, no occupation, all of that is not there, so we don't need to worry too much about that. This is the authority to release. We have one of the forms, which is number 3. Number 4 is specific to Logan Hospital. They're very pedantic and they want their form and nothing else. They don't use the generic form from every other hospital. So that's there. Then we've got the next form is each of the councils form there. So there's Brisbane City Council, Gold Coast, and Beenleigh. What I just say here is Beenleigh has got a form that's separate as well, because Beenleigh Cemetery is a lawn cemetery. When the Islamic Council of Queensland negotiated for this, I think out of a bit of ignorance of the process, they accepted a lawn cemetery. A lawn cemetery means it's that flat cemetery where there's grass grown, there's no mounds, there's no plants, there's no trees, nothing. And that's what Beenleigh is. So they want a separate form to say you understand that. So that once we're buried there, you don't come and say, well, I want to put a mound and I want to put some plants on it. It doesn't happen. It's just not going to happen. So that's just the way it is. The next thing is, that's just a snapshot of one of our forms as it is online. Now, these forms are online. So once you complete them and hit send, they come to us electronically as an email. And the important thing as well about being an online electronic form is all the information you put in there is correct or supposed to be correct. So there's no, we have lots of errors we had in the old days when we were manual. This is all online, so you complete. But the most important thing about this is that you complete all the correct information. Not what you think somebody's name is, not what you think their mother's name or father's name or brothers or children's names. It has to be correct, because the information from this form then gets taken and sent off to the Department of Births, Deaths and Marriages. And I can't tell you how many times somebody calls back and say, oh, no, but this name is incorrect. It's spelled incorrectly, or they've come in from wherever, Pakistan, Kenya, wherever. We've got an estate we're dealing with back home and the names don't match. Then you've got to go back to the Department of Births, Deaths and Marriages to make those changes. It slows down the whole process. Or if you go to the bank here and say we want to release the funds and the names don't match, not going to happen. So we need to make sure that the information is correct. And that's absolutely crucial that we do that there. So as far as the process for us, there are 3 basic steps. There's the washing and shrouding, which is the ghusl and the kafan, the janazah salah, and then the burial process that takes place. As far as the ghusl and the kafan, most happen at Karabi Masjid. And this is just because of the convenience of us having our facility and our room there. But it can be done at a local masjid, and there's a few that are now doing it. Holland Park used to, they don't do too much now, but Al Jesta has now got a room, Dara has got a room there. So we're happy to do it wherever it is, it's not a problem. The Janazah Salah may take place at your local masjid or at the cemetery. I'm going to spend a couple of minutes on this, is very important. So embalming only takes place when we're sending a janazah overseas. If you hear nothing else today, and remember this one thing, if we come from a country overseas and somebody passes away here, all we say is, brothers and sisters, bury the person wherever they pass away. Embalming is required for every overseas transfer. From Australian government, international government, airlines, everybody requires the body be embalmed. And the embalming process is not a very pleasant process for the janazah itself. We might think that we're doing the person a favor, sending them back to the rest of the family or back home, loved ones, whatever the case is, but the janazah is actually made to suffer. And it's a very, very traumatic process. It is not something we should encourage. For those of you that ever see or on our website, I've got the full list of exactly how that embalming process, each of the steps. And if you read that, you'll understand that it's just not something you want your loved one to go through. The Islamic view is that any pain given or injury to the deceased after death is exactly like doing it to the person whilst they're alive. And no one would want this kind of trauma imposed on them at any time. So it's something that we should make sure we do not encourage. It's a very, very important thing. I can't tell you how we do it. And you know, because the family insists and people want it done, and we do it, we outsource it to someone else, but it's just not the right thing. And it's absolutely very, very traumatic for the janazah. So this explains it in detail, the different types of embalming, the cavity, the arterial embalming, all of that stuff on our website. So if ever you're interested, go and read the details there, but it is there. That's Karabi Masjid. This is our ghusl room at Karabi. And in that, we've got on our web page, like what a ghusl room should have, what is the requirements in there. Each of that is all listed in there. So if any of the small communities, even up north, want to make a ghusl room, they can just follow that information. That's our ghusl table that's there. This is a trolley that we use after the ghusl is completed. The janazah is placed on this, and we'll talk about it a little bit later. But what you see there is this is a little cartel or baya that we use to transfer the janazah after ghusl to the cemetery, to the janazah salah, all of that stuff. On that is this little black mat. We put that black mat, it's got some straps on the side. The janazah is placed here after when the kafan is being wrapped. That is what we lift to lower the janazah into the grave at the time of burial. So that it's 6 people or 8 people hold it on either side, all up, and then they lower the janazah in there. It's received by somebody in the grave, positioned properly, and that black mat comes out then. All right, so that's what that is there for. This is the cartel or the baya we use to transfer the janazah. That's what it looks like with the cover on that. That there is our ghusl table there at Karabi Masjid, and that's where we are there. That's electronic, height adjustable, goes up, down, all of that there. This is just showing you a few different things. So that's the kafan opened up, that's a body in the body bag, and that's the trolley that we use. The ghusl procedure again is there on our website in absolute detail. If somebody ever needs to do it, they can do it simply by following the steps. I like to say the story every now, whenever we talk about this. We had an email from a brother in a small town in India somewhere, really way out, and they said they have never done ghusl on their family ever. And somebody passed away in that small village, and they followed this website, went through step by step, and were able to do ghusl for their family. So I think it's very important, as much as we think it's just a bit of information, but it has worked for people around the world even. So this is each of the steps that we have listed there, what to do, how to do. And we'll talk about that a little later when we do that practical class. But there's details here which you can always read and refresh. The kafan, exactly what the kafan looks like, how to wrap the kafan, how to do the shroud, how to wrap each side, and you'll come across that a little bit later. That's the female kafan, and this is just showing you the kafan, how it's cut and placed there. I'll show you another slide that's got this here. This is what we talk about, the kameez of the kafan, which is a shirt. And this is just showing you how that shirt is folded in half. It's cut to put the neck through, and then it's rolled up before the janazah is placed here. It's unrolled, and the kafan gets wrapped. Okay, so this is a male kafan. We've got 3 pieces through it: the outermost covering sheet, the middle sheet, and the shirt on the top. So for men, there are only 3 pieces for the kafan. We also have 2 other separate pieces that are not part of the kafan. We call the satar. That's to cover from the belly button to the knees for men, and for ladies from the breast to below the private parts area, to cover at the time of ghusl. So the janazah always stays covered at the time of the ghusl, and we have 2 pieces of that we pack separately or provide separately. Or if you don't have that, simple towels work. So a nice thick towel that goes around the body to cover it during ghusl, and after you have finished and after the cleaning, you put a second clean piece of the satar on there. This is the female kafan. It's got 2 extra pieces. One is the chest wrap called a sina band, and another wrap over here that goes, which is the orni, or the head covering. That's the 2 separate extra pieces that the females have. This is again on our website. It's got the actual sizes of the kafan. So when we pre-pack the kafan, we're now using these sizes. We open it, pack it, we'll show you what it looks like, and each of the kafan sizes are there. This is just a sweatshop of us cutting the kafan, and that's what it looks like when it's all packed and ready, and that's just our storeroom at the back. All right, so the janazah salah, this is, I said to you, another one at Karabi Masjid. That's there. And that's the one that we had last year. Cemeteries, we do burial at several cemeteries around Brisbane. So we've got Mount Gravatt, Beenleigh Cemetery, Hammond Cemetery, the Gold Coast at Coomera, Toowoomba, Ipswich is now operating, Mackay, Rocky, and we've just negotiated at Gladstone not so long ago. So the MOU has been signed, and inshallah that should be up and running pretty soon. This is Mount Gravatt at the time of a burial. And then on our website, we've got burials information that's got the different cemeteries and how to get there. So that's just the Google Maps, how for you to get to the different cemeteries. Hammond is a new one, which is probably not too bad and pretty close to you guys here. Hammond opened about 3 years ago, I think. And in terms of access, it's pretty convenient, accessible, and there's lots of space there. Mount Gravatt is filling up quick and fast, and we've taken one section, next section, and we've just progressed along, and it's still filling up pretty quickly. So this is Mount Gravatt. When we first started, 20 or 20 years ago or so, this was originally the old Muslim section here. So 2A, 1A, that filled up. Then we went across to this section here. That got totally filled up. At the front section here, we've got the children and the stillborns are still being buried here. Then we went across to what's shown here as L19 and 20. That filled up totally. We've now they've reclaimed some land right at the front here where the road used to be. And they've reclaimed, compacted, filled that in, and we're using that section at the moment. This is the Hammond Cemetery. So at the moment we are burying down here, but inshallah we've got that whole section for us as Muslim community. All right, so hopefully that should see us through for a few hundred graves there. That's Mount Gravatt Cemetery. This is Toowoomba Cemetery. And this is the grave shapes I'm going to spend a couple of minutes on, because every now and again for different communities, they have questions about this here. So there are 4 basic grave shapes that we use around the world, wherever we are. This is the original Sunnah Al-Lahad way, where Rasulullah ﷺ was buried. where you dig the grave down, put a little trench on one corner, little alcove in there, the janazah is put in there, and then on the outside here, they put in sand blocks or anything there to cover that up, or bricks or concrete blocks to cover that. That doesn't get used too much. It takes a lot more space, and we haven't used it other than in probably seeing it happen in Medina or Makkah. I don't see it anywhere else happen. I'm South African and been through many cemeteries there and many here, and this hasn't been done here. The second way is the al-shaq, and what that is we dig it, especially if you've got good firm hard soil, you dig into the grave. The bottom, you leave the two sides with a trench dug in with sand on either side. So what that's pretty good solid sand in there, and on top of that we put the janazah in the center and put a timber sleeper slats on the top, and that's pretty solid ground, so that's fine. The third is where we put the janazah on one corner along one side of the grave, and the janazah lies on the right hand side or shoulder and facing the direction of Mecca and Saudi Arabia, the Qibla direction. And then on top of that, we put the sleepers that go along the wall at 45 degrees all the way along there. And then the last one is what we're using now again at Mount Gravatt. And this is just a four-sided timber box. The box is dropped into the grave, janazah is put in there, and timber sleepers on the top there. All right, so those are the four different type of sleepers. I probably will just say, when we first started using this system, 25 years ago, or not this system, but 25 years ago when we started with burials that we started looking after, there used to be concrete blocks in the grave being put to prepare for the burial. We don't use it. There are some communities that use it, and if they need to have it done, we let someone do it for them on their behalf, but we don't use that anymore. So the concrete blocks we don't use as MFS. Great, so that's just describing what I was talking about in terms of the four graves. All right, so all of this again is on the website as far as the graves concerned. The next thing I'm going to talk about is the costs, and this is important. Some of us come from countries where the cost of the burial is borne by the state, your local government, or the local community, or the mosque society you belong to. That doesn't happen here. We all pay for the cost of the burials, and a significant portion, just over 2/3 of the cost, is the Brisbane or Logan City Council fees. Whichever council you belong to, their fees are quite expensive. And so this is showing you Mount Gravatt fees here. On a normal weekday office hours, it's about $7,300. On a Saturday, council charges us extra, and that goes over $8,000. On a Sunday, it's $9,000. On a public holiday, it's $9,500. Now, these are council charges extra for overtime for bringing staff in to do that. From our end, there's no change in the fees we charge. Then they have the stillborn, we have stillborn fees and children's fees here all listed there. At Kumara, that's the fees there. Beenley, that's their fees going down. And Hemmant there is similar to what happens at Mount Gravatt. Brisbane, or all the councils come 1st of July have a fee increase. Normally between 5 to 10%. So that fee will go up next week or on Tuesday. They've already sent that through. So any burials up until Monday, that will be the fee. Tuesday, it goes up by between 5 and 10%. Last year, they put it up quite significantly because they gave us a break for a year or two through COVID. But last year, it went up quite significantly. All right, the next thing I'm going to talk about is a funeral savings plan. I'm just going to put all of that there. So the reason we talk about that is again related to cost. When we take the cost, because everyone struggles and not everyone has money available, we have created a funeral savings plan. The funeral savings plan is us really just being a manager of your money. There's nothing that we benefit. It is not an insurance. It's not a Guardian National Insurance Fund. What you put into the fund is what you get out. So really you can put in quarterly, monthly, annually, whatever you want into the fund, and whatever you put in when it's needed, that's what you get out. There's no fees, there's no charges from our end, there's no benefit from our end. The family is still responsible for any shortfall, and at the end of the day, that's a responsibility for us Islamically, that each one of our burials are our individual responsibility or to our estate. Then as part of this fund, we can either do it for individuals or we do it for groups in a community that might work. Now, I'll talk about this in a little bit more detail. What we have is, this was formed at the initiation when the company was first formed. When we spoke about this here, we had a few elderly people living in our community that had no family living with them. You know, our very first example of an individual was an Egyptian sister living here alone. One son lived in the US, one lived in Egypt, and so she had nobody here. And what she didn't want is her funeral to become a burden on the rest of the community or family and friends that made, from overseas and friends here. So she came to us and said, can we do something like this? And that's what we did when we started the company. She was one of the first people as an individual to put in money into that account. And she did that about now 15, 16 years ago. Alhamdulillah, she is still alive and well and going, but she's probably well into her 80s now. The next thing is the groups or community groups. And the one I talk about is the Somalian community. So the Somalian community is pretty strong in Brisbane, and they've been trying to do something like this for many years, but it just didn't happen within their community. So when we come along, they had a meeting with us and said, listen, we'd like to establish this fund using what you guys got. So what we have is an MOU between us and them. They have a small group of people that are the liaison between us and their community. And the first meeting we had was on a Sunday back in 2010. And the policy they adopted is anybody that is Somalian, whether you put in $1 into this fund or not, is covered by their fund. That Wednesday, we got a call to say, hey, there's a sister who's here from New Zealand. We don't know her. She's not related to anybody here and hasn't paid into this fund, but our policy says that we will cover her funeral. So she arrived, she was palliative care, and within a couple of weeks of that, she passed away. And that happened to be the Wednesday after we spoke. And they just said, cover it through our fund, and that's fine. And we've been running with them now for the past 15 years. So the way they started off by putting enough into that fund to cover 2 or 3 funerals. Every time we used buried out of that fund, they topped up that. And they now do it once a year, once, whatever, every couple of months. They top up the fund, so we're able to use from there. And that's how we've operated. So it works. We've got the Muruka community, and we've got a few other communities along the way, and we've got lots of individuals who are part of this here. Okay, so the next thing we'll talk about is mixed marriages. I'm just going to click all of them through. All right, now this is very important because in mixed marriages, there's always the concern of, in particular, it's the sisters who are married to Aussies who may not be Muslim or might be recently reverted Muslim. And they have this concern about how am I going to be buried when I pass away and what's going to happen to the janazah. And our experience was always that whenever they had this conversation between them, their partner, extended family, and this also applies to reverts. So when we get somebody who's reverted, the rest of the entire family could be non-Muslim. That one brother or sister could be Muslim. If they have this discussion, we find most often the family goes out of their way to ensure that whatever needs to be done is Islamic. Our problem of things that are un-Islamic happening is those people who were born Muslim, who are not practicing, who then come and say, and I'm going to use a few examples, but we had a brother whose mother passed away, and many, many years ago came and said, my mother was a very fashionable woman and she loved jewelry. We'd like for her to be buried with her jewelry. I stopped dead on the road, had a long chat with him and said, brother, your mother decided to be buried as a Muslim.
Islam does not allow this. We cannot have this. It is not. No, I know all that. I went to Sunday school when I was a kid, but I still want to do that. I said, okay, brother, we're not going to fight and argue with you. That's your decision. After we have done the ghusl and the kafan, what you come and do is up to you. And he came and he did put the jewelry in, and she got buried with it. So every so often we're going to get that. But people who had the discussion where there's a revert, we've had a brother whose wife passed away. He had already bought 2 graves at Albany Creek in the non-Muslim section. When his wife passed away, he said, no, I paid for that. It cost me $20,000 or whatever. But my wife is Malaysian. When her family comes here, I want to be able to show them face that I did the right things for their daughter. So he then buried at Mount Gravatt in the Muslim section as we would normally do. He said, forget about what we bought and what we paid for. So these things do happen, but we find that most often it's important that people have these conversations and have these discussions, and we will try and accommodate whatever it is at that very difficult time to make things happen. Going back to that slide earlier, there's probably only 3 things that are crucial to us. That the person has a ghusl, has a janaza, the janaza salah is prayed, and they are buried. So they're not cremated, okay? So those are kind of the 3 main things. When we're dealing with mixed marriages, when we're dealing with people who the entire family is not Muslim, if we get those 3 things, the rest are really not things that we fight and argue about. You know, the family, and we've had one where the mother decided, the daughter was the only person that's Muslim in that home. Mother decided, I live next to the cemetery, just up on the north side at Pinnaru. I would like my daughter to be buried there. And we said, well, okay, we haven't, but you know, that's okay, we did that. I would like my daughter to be buried in a coffin. Not a big deal. We buried in a coffin. But those are kind of those exceptions where we sit down and work around what's doable, what's not doable, what is un-Islamic, we will tell them. But from all the imams, this is between the deceased, the family, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We're not there to be judge, jury, executioner. We will tell you what you need to do. The rest is up to you. And I think when we're dealing with a family where everybody is non-Muslim and we got one person that's Muslim, we got to stop, take stock of what we do, think about the fact that if we were in that situation as Muslims, how difficult death and dying is. Imagine for that family, they've lost a daughter who was 40 odd years old, and all of them are non-Muslim around us here. They had support from all her family and friends that come along and said, no, okay, you know, we'll help and support. It took them 2 weeks to bury the lady, but it was negotiation. Every day it was 10 phone calls about, my mother wants to know this, that. Can we have a wake? Can they sing hymns at the side of the graveside? It was all of these questions that are normal for them, abnormal to us, but we got to deal with it with compassion because it's a difficult time for them and we have to respect that for them. And so we worked through this whole process. When we finished, I've never met the mother before, but at the cemetery, she came, put her hand on my shoulder and said, thank you for making this very difficult time an easier time for us. And I think that's an important thing we have to learn. And what she said to me is, while everybody came along and said, that's okay, condolences, she said, one sister come along and said, hey, we Muslim, we do this like that, and that like that, and that like that, and you can't do this. I said, listen, don't worry about that person. That's the one out of all the other 20 people that came home and visited you. And that's what we need to be sensitive about. We cannot go and dictate to a non-Muslim family. We need to make sure what we need is done. The rest is in the hands of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that's what we need to do. So it's a lot of talking, negotiating, and making it happen. But the decision is to try and make as much as possible Islamically done. And we'd advise them always and say something maybe un-Islamic. Or something is un-Islamic, but it's acceptable. We can live with that. And that's the kind of stuff that we need to do. All right, so other information that we have on our website is an Islamic will kit, which is a basic will kit that's there. It's okay for basic mom and dad family, not somebody who's got a big estate, who's got multiple companies, who's got trust. That's not for you. So the basic Islamic will kit is on the website. one of the brothers that has an Islamic interest in Islamic wills has provided this information to us. So that's all up and running. You're welcome to look at it. The second thing is my funeral wish, and that's mainly for those sisters who are married to non-Muslims, or brothers for that matter, where they want to document what we'd like done. So I am Muslim. I do not want to be cremated. I want to be buried. I'd like to be buried in a Muslim section of a cemetery closest to home. I do not want to be embalmed. I do not want to be repatriated. They tick all of those boxes, sign that document, JP and stat deck that document, and then put it with their legal paperwork. So when it happens, somebody knows this is their wish. And why that's important, we've had one brother who was married to a sister from Malaysia for 12, 13 years. They had a kid that was 12 years old. Photograph, proof of marriage, photograph of their wedding, their children, their life together. The sister was on holiday in Malaysia. The brother, he became Muslim after that marriage. He was non-Muslim initially, married to a non-Muslim Christian lady, became Muslim after the marriage, but was never registered anywhere. He was still registered to marriage to his first wife. The wife was on holiday in Malaysia. He passed away here. When he passed away and the body was found in his flat, the only information here was his registered marriage the first time around. So the police went as next of kin, contact that lady, and she was non-Muslim and decided, yep, that's fine. He was my husband. He's going to be cremated, da, da, da. So they did everything according to what they needed to. The sister came along and we tried to have the discussion and the conversation. She just didn't have that in her to fight this process with the non-Muslim family. So that brother unfortunately ended up being cremated because of the way it is. And what we're saying is, because there was no document, no will, no anything to say, firstly, I'm Muslim, and that's beside the point, but I do not want to even be cremated. So these things are important things that we have the conversations about. We've had one brother who was a bikie on the Gold Coast, and his entire biking community was there, and he was part of a mixed marriage situation. So they had to, the family that was Muslim, the part of the family that was Muslim went to court. They got this interdict from court, itemizing the entire process from the Gold Coast with his entourage of bikies that will bring the janazah to Mount Gravatt Cemetery. Then at the chapel, the Christian side had their Christian ceremony, and then they handed over to us as the Muslim section to bury this person. So there are lots of things that we've gone through over the years, but I think it's important that people discuss and have this conversation. Otherwise, nobody knows, and if it's not written down, it doesn't happen. Quran recitation, I like to talk about this. We had a call many years ago from a nurse at a small hospital out in the bush somewhere, and said somebody who's Muslim made an accident. He's got significant injury, expected to die soon. Can we get the priest to come and read his last rites? I said, there's no Muslims in this town, not that we know of. We don't know anybody. What are we going to do for this young brother that's there? And what we did, so I said to her over the phone, I said, hey, go onto YouTube, look for this here. Told her, go and look for Surah Yasin, put that on and let it play in the background. So that day I went onto the website and I then loaded, Surah Yasin, Fatiha, the 3 Quls. So I know if somebody calls me, I said, just go to the website. At the bottom, this is there. Just sit and play it. Now the other side so that story that's a real story. And then we had a brother who was at a nursing home in Sunnybank Hills. He was an Egyptian brother, terminally ill. His GP, who happened to be Muslim, got on to us, and Yusuf and I went to visit him one day. So we visited this brother. He had absolutely no family in the nursing home on his way out. So we told the nursing home what to do, how to position the body, what to do when he passes away, and gave them all of that information. They did that. Alhamdulillah, they did all of that. That night when Yusuf and I, when he passed away 2 weeks later, went to pick up the janazah, we saw 2 sisters standing outside the hospital, outside the nursing home. And they were from Africa, from Kenya, I think. And both of them were kind of sad and somber, and we said, oh, yeah. They said, oh, we looked after him. He was a really nice man. And then so when we went into his room to pick up the janazah, there was a Walkman there with the Quran being recited in his room. So the two sisters were standing there, and one says to me, I am Muslim, and she is non-Muslim, she's Christian. But she arranged that Quran and the Walkman for the man in his room because her mother worked in Egypt, and she knew how important it is for this to be happening at the time of somebody passing away. So where we didn't even think about it, there's a non-Muslim who came and thought about that. So Allah looks after all of us in his own way. And I think sometimes we forget these simple things that people do on our behalf. Everything I said is in a little booklet that's on the website. It's a bit dated now, a few years ago, but it's there. So this is the Islamic will kit. That's the page that's got that there. This is my funeral wish. The Quran recitation, as I said, is over there. We hold a few school groups that come through as an education session, very much like what I'm doing here, for the year 12s at ICB and Australian International Islamic College. And so we'd hold these workshops for them and run them through. I have a page over there that's frequently asked questions, not totally for us, but mainly for people that want to ask, non-Muslims mainly that want to come. This is the footer of our web page. So it's got a few different things there that people can go through. So that's the kind of the procedure. Maybe I'll just run through the practical ghusl class, and then happy to take questions. And then after that, Riaz will do the male ghusl class that everyone's welcome to attend. The sisters can sit and listen and look at that as well. So as far as ghusl is concerned, the person's got to be an adult Muslim. So we have 3 to 4 people doing the ghusl. Depends on the size of the janazah. If it's a very big janazah, we may have more. The person that's doing the ghusl should be the same gender as the deceased. So men for men, ladies for ladies, children that are not yet baligh or puberty, anyone can do. Patient should have wudu and know how to do ghusl. So it's not like every person there. There should be somebody from our team or your team, whoever it is, that knows how to do and what to do. Then you get the family involved, and they're really there to support and help you and to be part of this very important process for their own family. Very important, and we say this again and again, it is an Islamic thing that you never share what you see in the ghusl room outside of the ghusl. So, this brother had a tattoo, or this janazah was like that, or whatever the case is, absolutely nothing. When you're doing the ghusl, there's got to be some decorum related to death, dying. There's no conversation. And I'm saying this because this is the reality. Sometimes we've got really youngsters who are our volunteer team, and they're discussing last night's soccer, outcome of the game. Doesn't happen. And we have to teach and educate them. So we do that. Said, brothers, this is not where you need to talk and have this conversation. So the place is any quiet room, secluded room. We have a table, warm water, the outlet, protective clothing. I'm not going to run through all of these things in detail, but we've got the janazah placed there in a body bag. Before we remove, we cover that part of the aura with that satar. We then cut off the clothing with scissors, remove any clothing that might be there. Go ahead, keep that aura covered at all times. Remove any tubes, jewelry, name tags, hospital name tags, cut it off. I saw an imam do a ghusl once, and the janazah was finished, closed off, and I'm seeing the hospital tag was left behind. We don't need to do this. We need to take it out. It's common sense. Nobody needs to. We assume they know how to do that. All right. Now, as far as the 3 steps of ghusl, first is the istinja, and that is washing off any impurities, cleaning of the private areas. The next is the actual wudu for the deceased. The third is the ghusl procedure, and we'll run through that in detail. Again, always wear gloves. There's no ifs, buts, maybes about it, and this person is family or there's friend of mine. This is mandatory. Okay, 25, 30 years ago, it didn't happen. Now it's absolutely crucial. So we said remove all the outside stuff, pad and dress any wounds that are bleeding.
We lift the janazah gently, remove any impurities, apply a bit of pressure on the abdomen, wash and clean that area, change the gloves, and then the next thing is change gloves, clean gloves, do wudu, like we would do for any one of us, except we're not pouring water into the mouth or the nose. We're just going to use a cotton wool. So a wet cotton wool, we're going to clean the teeth on either side and into the nostril as well. So there's no flowing water going in there. The ghusl itself is washing the body, soap and water. We start from the head, wash clean. For the ladies, men, the bearded men. For the ladies, after it's washed, they braid the hair into 3 parts. Then we do the upper right-hand side of the body, then the upper left-hand side, the lower right, the lower left. All right, so we washed all of that. And then after we've washed everything in 3 times in the same order, we're going to then do the final rinse. And the part of this final rinse is we put in some camphor in there. We crush the camphor, put it in there, or some bay leaves or cedar leaves is what we put in with that water. We dry the body, we dab it dry. There's no rubbing happening. The aura, we put a clean sheet over that and it stays covered all the time till the coffin gets wrapped. Okay, then we start the shrouding process. We open up the coffin and we'll show you that when we're ready to do that. We transfer the janazah from the washed table onto the dry table that I showed you with the black sheet over there. In that we put in the janazah in those layers, as we said. We'll show you how it's done. Certain communities do sandalwood paste on the 7 parts of the body that touch the ground. That's okay, no dramas with that. We place the hands on the sides. We open out that rolled shirt, put the head through, close that off. And once that's closed, we can really then take off that satar because now it's all covered and closed up. Then we put in the second, third layer, final layer, close it all off. And that's that shirt we showed you earlier. So that's folded, head in there. We roll it up, then unroll it, cover the body with that. All right, so I showed you the male coffin, female coffin. We'll show you the male one here. That's our contact details. Each one of our mobile numbers is on the website. So we say make dua for us and guide us to continue doing what we do, and we always need the community support. We try and do our best, and any shortcomings, we ask for your forgiveness and the forgiveness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Remember us in our duas. That's just there because I wear a few hats, and so some people look at me a bit confused. So I'm a GP in my day job, founder of the Islamic Medical Association, director of MFS, Presence of Brisbane, Brisbane Islamic Center, and Lockyer Valley Islamic Association. So that's there. And our contact details are all there. And we can now take any questions you have.
أنذرتهم أم لم تنذرهم لا يؤمنون إنما تنذر من اتبع الذكر وخشي الرحمن بالغيب فبشره بمغفرة وأجر كريم إنا نحن نحيي الموتى ونكتب ما قدموا وآثارهم وكل شيء أحصيناه في إمام